Leadership makes and breaks companies. Research and practice show the availability of leaders with high potential increases organisational success through higher rates of workforce engagement, employee satisfaction, a positive culture, and overall responsiveness to changing customer demands and emerging market opportunities. When you look at the most common problems for organisations, a lack of leadership or poor leadership are consistently some of the highest ranking issues. The leadership capabilities of a workforce should be one of senior management's chief concerns. Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Andrea North-Samardzic. I'm a lecturer at Deakin Business School where I teach postgraduate students and research contemporary leadership issues. I'm also the course director of the Master of Professional Practice in Leadership. I've taught at universities both in Australia and overseas for 15 years, and I'm excited about teaching you more about leadership. However, leadership is a word that is used often but is very misunderstood. In this course, I want to cut through all the hype and get straight into answering the question, what is leadership? To do this, we will be looking first at who is a leader and what leaders mean to us, before embarking on an investigation into what leadership is really about and how it is different to management. This will involve examining our sources of power and influence, because what is a leader without power and what is leadership without influence? Through the course of our discussions, you may find yourself disagreeing with your peers and even with me. So in the latter part of this course, we will explore how individuality makes us see the world and leadership in different ways. There'll be a range of activities in this course. Videos to watch, short text articles to read, and after every step, you'll be asked to complete a small task, as an individual or as a group, by participating in an online discussion about various leadership issues, but most importantly, sharing your experiences of leadership in the workplace. This course won't talk about the various theories of leadership or get into the debate about whether great leaders are born or made. We'll get into that in later courses, in which I hope you'll join me. But first, let's get started on answering the question, what is leadership, by looking at our leader role models. You may be wondering who I see as a leader. I consider Nelson Mandela to be a leader, as he fought tirelessly for human rights. He believed in equality and never backed down from his aim to achieve this lofty goal. He set an example for the rest of humanity. He fought with dignity and courage, qualities that everyone should aspire to have. So did you just learn something about Nelson Mandela? Perhaps. But you also learned something else. Rather than just learning about Mandela, you have gleaned some valuable information about me. I just told you that I place value on human rights and social justice causes, and that I saw his conduct as dignified and courageous, and as such, have high regard for people who behave in ways that I see to be dignified and courageous. It also shows that when describing a leader, you often learn more about the person who is describing the leader than the leader themselves, because you are hearing about the leader and seeing them through someone else's eyes. So if you want to learn something about another person, get them to describe a leader. It won't necessarily tell you useful things about leaders or leadership, but you will get to know the person better. This notion of learning about other people through their description of a leader transitions us into defining leadership. Now, it may seem odd that we have discussed leaders before discussing leadership. However, I wanted to take the time to explore our own ideas about leaders and leadership, which tend to impact on the way we see things more than academic definitions. Yet academic definitions are essential to any student of leadership. There are a huge number of available definitions of leadership, yet there are three commonalities that unite them all. First, leadership involves influence. Leaders are people who influence the actions of others. Second, leadership occurs in groups. Leadership is usually associated with an individual influencing more than one person. And third, leadership involves common goals. Leaders work towards something, such as a vision or an objective. For simplicity, in this unit, we will be adopting Northhouse's definition, which is, leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. First, leadership does not exist without followership. A leader has to have followers or they are not a leader. We'll explore this further in one of the later courses. Second, For leadership to be meaningful and effective, it must be directed towards something. That is, have a goal. It must also be mutually shared with the implication that the followers are willfully participating in the act of leadership. There is a wealth of research on goal setting that proves the importance of goals to motivate people at work, and this translates readily to the leadership process. At this point, it must be emphasised that the most contemporary approaches to leadership see it as a process. Being a leader is not who you are. Leadership is something you do. We take the view that anyone can be a leader simply by enacting leadership, by influencing others to achieve a common goal. Now, this is quite different from trait theory that we will discuss in depth in the next course. Even if you do believe that some people have special innate talents that predispose themselves to leadership, you must still believe that you can develop your leadership attributes and be more effective. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this course now, would you? This week we have covered a lot of information about leaders, leader role models, and leadership as a process. Hopefully you have learned a bit more about yourself and your approach to leadership. This week was focused largely on acquiring and consolidating new and existing knowledge about leadership to answer the question, what is it really? Next week, we will shift our attention to how leadership is practiced. We will explore sources of power and how they can transform into influence. Essentially, how you can practice leadership. This will also involve an examination of leadership versus management. Next week, we will go through ways in which you can influence others at work, as well as how you can negate influence attempts from other people. Central to this will be an understanding of individual differences, particularly how perceptions shape the way we view and enact leadership at work. So come with me, and let's start to think about how we can practice leadership more effectively. Management existed in organisations way before leadership. Back in the day, you didn't need to lead people, just manage them. Management was about planning, organising and controlling. Leading didn't come till much later. And why is that? Well, think about the earlier origins of organisations. You didn't decide on a career even back then. You were either born into a certain vocation or chose one that you performed till you were no longer physically capable of doing it. Senior people just had to make sure that people did these jobs and then meted out punishment when it wasn't done properly. When people started to have more choice and freedom about what they did, there also came the choice of not doing it. So management wasn't always enough and people needed to be influenced and motivated to achieve. But leadership isn't always preferable to management. If there is a policy or process in place that ensures people are doing what they are supposed to their best possible ability, then this often works better. The process of influencing and inspiring people takes time and doesn't always work. But a position description that says, you must do X, tends to work far better and more efficiently than the complex dance of leading a group of people to do something that they otherwise would not do. So don't always think that leadership is better than management. But whether you have the capacity to exercise leadership depends on your power. We will explore that in the next activity. Warren Bennis came up with a neat distinction between the two, which we still use to this day. We will now go through some examples of these influence tactics and how they may sound in practice. First, rational persuasion. Here, you use logic and reason to persuade. You must provide evidence for why someone should follow you. So put forward your business case. For example, we shouldn't renew this contract as it just isn't meeting the goals we set out to achieve. Second, apprising. This is about explaining the benefits for why someone should follow you. For example, this is a great opportunity and would open up a lot of doors for us. Then there's inspirational appeals, which involves arousing emotions in people, connecting with their hearts, not just their minds. So use emotive language, tell a rich story, use metaphors. We aren't doing this for the money, it isn't for the glory, it's because it's the right thing to do. Then there's consultation. Seeking input from others. Ask for advice and assistance. It's a common way of bringing people in and even getting them on the first step for participation. Getting someone's advice, thoughts, feedback is essentially consultation, and everyone loves to give free advice. Collaboration is providing resources and assistance to others. Based on implicit notions of reciprocity, and we'll get to this in the next activity, when you provide resources such as your time and assistance to others, it can help build up your social capital, and you can draw from it now or later. Ingratiation. This is where you use flattery and praise as a source of influence. This doesn't have the tendency to work all that well, especially if you don't mean it. But if you are inspired by someone, please do tell them. Then there's personal appeals. Personal appeals use loyalty and friendship to influence others, such as, I'm asking as a personal favour if you could help me with this. Exchange or quid pro quo. If you help me with this, I'll help you in return. Or, there's a promotion in this for you. Then there's coalition tactics. Using co-worker support is important, but how it separates from consultation and collaboration is where you gather your small army of people to help you tackle a problem or goal. You may use one of the previous tactics to build your coalition. Then there's legitimating tactics. Here, you claim a right to make a request. For example, rather than explaining the benefits to your boss for requiring flexible work options or putting forward a business case, you have the option of simply pointing out that it is in your company's policy to ask for it. Pressure. You should use this last one sparingly, and it isn't something we really condone for effective leadership. It involves demanding, threatening, and checking up. However, sometimes it is necessary. If someone isn't performing their job properly, and there is a looming deadline and serious consequences, unfortunately, sometimes we have to force a solution.
I've known Greg for the last 3 years. We came across together during the buyout, but we're not exactly close friends or anything.
Oh, he joined the firm about 6 months ago. I thought he was a good boss. At first.
Greg's the best. These past 6 months working for him, I've never been happier. I couldn't ask for anything more in a team leader.
He can be pretty ruthless at times, but he's a good boss. Our team does well.
Greg is hilarious, one of the funniest guys I've ever met.
Pretty serious. He can't laugh at himself.
Super successful, knows his staff. We wouldn't have these clients if he wasn't running the show.
It was a Friday and we were finalising a pitch for a proposal on Monday. Elliot arrives late, would have been about 20 minutes late. Greg was really pissed off. He hates people being late.
So Greg says, "How did you miss this?" Elliot was flustered, didn't know what to say, makes some excuses. Greg cuts him off and says, "Not good enough, mate."
But it wasn't only about lateness for the meeting. Elliot was in charge of the budget, but Greg had clearly checked the numbers and Elliot had messed up. Greg confronted him. It got really nasty.
He stood up, he put his hands on the desk like this and said, "You better fix this or you're dead, mate."
Elliot just kind of apologised, so Greg says to him, "You better fix this, otherwise we're dead, mate."
Then Greg says, "You better fix this or you're dead, mate."
Are you sure that's what he said?
He definitely said, "You're dead, mate."
No. He said, "You better fix this, otherwise we're dead, mate." That's Greg. He tells it like it is.
So when was the last time you saw Elliot?
Would have been Monday afternoon when Greg and Elliot came back after the pitch meeting.
How were they behaving?
Well, it clearly didn't go well.
What made you think that?
Well, there was no excitement, no handshakes or high fives, which is usually what happens when someone wins a bid, but Greg did not look happy.
Greg was angry, Elliot was angry. We're all angry.
Elliot was really upset, depressed even. I was worried about him. But Greg, he was seriously angry.
We headed out at the same time together. We didn't speak. I thought he was heading out to lunch. That was the last time I saw him.
So the next day when Elliot didn't turn up, was this unusual?
Yeah, a bit. But if I'd stuffed up a client like that, I wouldn't dare show my face around the office for a day, maybe 2. Elliot. Well, maybe he couldn't handle the pressure. The last couple of weeks, he seemed like he'd taken his eye off the ball a little bit. So something was clearly wrong with him before the pitch.
So the next day we had a team meeting to discuss another client pitch. Everyone was there, but not Elliot.
So what was Greg like at the meeting?
His typical self. Oh, sorry, can I say that?
It was fine. To the point, direct. Look, some people want hugs and pats on the back and all that lovey-dovey bullshit, but Greg doesn't have time for that. Our team has a multi-million-dollar portfolio, and it's his ass on the line.
The meeting was fine. Greg was a little, distant. And he usually bounces back pretty quickly. I guess looking back on it, something else must have happened.
I know what it is that you're asking. And the answer is no. Greg had nothing to do with Elliot's death.
Look, his career's everything to him. It's his identity. So losing one of our major clients shatters his professional reputation. It's a massive blow to his ego. And Greg has a temper. Given those circumstances, I wouldn't put anything beyond him.
In our business, you have to be a little cold and detached. And like I said, even ruthless. But that doesn't make him a... Jesus, I can't even say it. But if you're asking me if Elliot didn't commit suicide, then I guess it's possible that Greg might somehow be involved. I mean, how well do you really know the people you work with?
So what do you think?
I don't know. Someone isn't telling the truth.
Nah, they're all telling the truth.
In this course, we look to answer the question, what is leadership? At its most fundamental, leadership is the process of influencing a group of people towards a common goal. But just because this may be fundamental doesn't make it simple. We want leadership, especially at work. Even in our personal lives, we have leadership role models, people who may influence the way we like to conduct ourselves. More importantly, who we have as our leadership role model says more about us than it does about the leader. Looking to individuals who may be successful isn't enough to answer the question, what is leadership? Now, this is important to understand, but it isn't always very practical, which is why in week 2, we looked at power and influence, what leadership looks like in practice. We also looked at how individual differences shape the way we view the world and thus leadership. This way, hopefully, if someone were to ask you, what is leadership? You can answer the question, it's something I do. However, this is only a small piece of the leadership puzzle. There are lots of different theories of and approaches to leadership. You may not be sure which ones work, which ones have the most evidence, which ones have lasted the test of time, and which ones are the most recent. These are the issues we will be addressing in the rest of the unit, in courses 2 to 5. We will go through all of the modern and popular approaches to leadership, analyse their strengths and weaknesses, and even have the opportunity to practice them in the workplace to see if they will really help you become more effective at leadership. The questions we will ask are, what makes someone a leader? Is success about being at the right place at the right time? Is leadership different now? And can anyone be a leader? So I hope you will join me on the rest of the journey of discovery about leadership and your own personal journey to become a better leader at work.